If there's one character in Dragon Ball history that's gotten beaten up even more than the main character of the series himself, Goku, it would have to be his longtime rival Vegeta, which is quite amazing because Goku had a very, very long head start over Vegeta in the series if you were to separate Dragon Ball from Dragon Ball Z and include all of the beatdowns that Goku took in Dragon Ball combined with all of the beatdowns that Goku's taken afterwards. So for Vegeta to surpass Goku, it's quite amazing. But the point that we're trying to get at in today's video is that there's generally a consensus big three of beatdowns that Vegeta has taken throughout Dragon Ball history. And in today's video, we will compare the physical abuse to the mental abuse that Vegeta took, specifically in his mindsets, and we will come to a consensus and a conclusion at the end. Now, the first beatdown that we have to mention, guys, is Kid Buu. Now, this is a very, very straightforward beatdown, and there really wasn't any mental abuse to this, specifically because of the fact that Vegeta really hadn't gone through anything that would have been affecting him on his mind in this fight as compared to others, specifically because of the fact that in this fight, Vegeta absolutely knew from the beginning, considering how much trouble Goku was having against Kid Buu's Super Saiyan 3, and Vegeta knowing that he wasn't able to go into a Super Saiyan 3, Vegeta knew from the very beginning that he fought Kid Buu that he stood basically no chance against him, which puts him in a very different class of fighting as compared to the other fights that we will mention later. In this fight, Vegeta knew that he was basically just cannon fodder to hold Kid Buu off to buy time for Goku to figure out some way to defeat him, either as a Super Saiyan 3 and later on when he was powering up the Spirit Bomb. But the physical abuse that Vegeta took in this fight was rather creative in its nature. I mean, to be specific, we have one key moment that many fans will mention where we see Kid Buu not only just beating the tar out of Vegeta, but he literally just grabs his face and literally just blasts it. Now, the way that he just completely disrespected him is very in nature of Kid Buu, considering that Kid Buu is a monstrosity, and when we also factor in that because Kid Buu is so chaotic in his abilities, it does seem something unpredictable for him to do. But apart from this, we see other moments where Kid Buu basically just strangles Vegeta and is basically just choking him to death. And we also have this classic beatdown where Kid Buu just uses a classic array of punches and kicks to basically wear Vegeta out, and he finishes him off at the moment by just smashing his face into the ground. And it's the extreme speed combined with the strength of Kid Buu that made him such a nightmare matchup for Vegeta, who was simply just trying to buy time for Goku. And the embarrassing thing about this moment is that it really brought Vegeta down in this arc, because if you look at all of the previous Buu forms, where you look at Gohan versus Super Buu, or if you look at Gotenks versus Super Buu, or even Goku versus Kid Buu, or even when you look at Super Saiyan 3 Goku versus Fat Buu, we've all had moments where we at least believed that a character would stand a chance against Buu, or at least was powerful enough to at least put up a really good fight. But as Dragon Ball fans, this was one fight that we knew going in that Vegeta stood absolutely no chance. And of course, he did stand absolutely no chance. But the interesting thing about this fight is how it was segmented, where if you look at the anime adaptation, Vegeta fought Kid Buu extra times because there were added anime scenes, where Goku was basically worn out against Kid Buu twice and had to power back up into Super Saiyan 3, and then we also have the last point where Vegeta was trying to buy time for the Spirit Bomb. So Vegeta essentially fought Kid Buu 3 times in the anime, whereas in the manga he only really fought him twice. Now, if we were to compare this directly to our next fight, guys, this is the fight that I thought legitimately had a chance at being Vegeta's worst beatdown. And this would have to be Android 18. And the primary reason why I feel like this fight is very bad for Vegeta was because of what it did to him mentally. It really felt like mental abuse more than anything else, because you have to remember Vegeta's mindset going into this fight. Vegeta, knowing that Goku was capable of turning into a Super Saiyan on planet Namek, had basically also found out that all of the other Z fighters, including himself, were going to die against the androids in the future. So what does Vegeta do about this? He trains so hard over the 3-year gap that he actually surpasses the main character in power, which is a rather incredible feat when you consider the massive distance that Goku had on Vegeta. You just have to think about the insane training that Vegeta did to himself and pushing himself to the absolute limit to acquire this Super Saiyan level of power. And then he goes to fight the androids, but specifically, at first, he fights against the weakest android, and for anybody who will question that, 17 and 18 are basically the same in power, it was said in the manga, as you're seeing on your screen right here, that 18's power was reduced relative to her brother 17. But the point is that when we look at this fight, guys, Vegeta had all the reasons in the world to believe that he had this fight won. He had just defeated Android 19 in an extremely brutal way where he ripped his arms off, literally, his metallic arms, and then he just blasted him away where his head just flopped around on the floor. And Vegeta was so alpha in these moments that he actually intimidated Dr. Gero, Android 20, into trying to attack him, which was a very interesting scene because, as Piccolo pointed out, if 20 actually had attacked Vegeta, he would have stood a pretty good chance considering that a lot of Vegeta's energy was already absorbed by 19 at that point. So he intimidated one android and he killed the other. And at this point, Vegeta is at an all-time high in believing that he is going to win this battle. And he gets to fight the weakest out of the three androids, who also happens to be a woman. Now, I don't know if we can confirm this with absolute fact because we don't know Vegeta's backstory, but we can probably confirm that at this specific point of his life, Vegeta's probably never taken a beating to a woman in his entire life. And he looks at her as this teenage-looking girl that he's easily just going to dominate with his new Super Saiyan powers. And as you watch the fight, it seems like Vegeta's definitely holding his own against 18. But as the fight drags on, and as you see that Vegeta is starting to lose more and more and more, and then as we find out that 18's holding back, the fight just slowly turns towards Vegeta. And the moment of truth is the key moment where we see Vegeta getting his arm busted by 18. But what makes it even worse is that Vegeta also gets his other arm broken by her too, rendering him completely helpless on the battlefield. And the reason why this ranks so high is that when you factor in all of what Vegeta did to get to this moment and thinking as high as he was, this was one of the biggest lows for Vegeta in his entire life. But the reason why we can't call this the worst beatdown is because of the moment that comes right after this. This would have to be Vegeta's moment against Frieza, which is an even worse version in Android 18 for many different reasons. Now, of course, Frieza didn't break both of Vegeta's arms, but he beat him so bad to the point where Vegeta was essentially immobile on the battlefield. And the difference between 18 and Frieza was the fact that 18 was toying with Vegeta because she was having fun. Frieza was toying Vegeta out of pure sadistic amusement, where you see Frieza holding him and basically just punching him down, and then the anime obviously has that interesting scene where Frieza eats a crab right around Vegeta, and all of this, just enjoying Vegeta's blood coming out and Frieza licking it. There's just so many moments in all of this. But apart from Frieza's excitement in causing Vegeta so much pain, just like Android 18, Vegeta had also believed that he had become a Super Saiyan. So, from his point of view, he thought he had actually accomplished something, only to find out that he accomplished nothing. And later on, when we would see Frieza beating the living tar out of Goku in his base form and Kaioken forms, we would know even further how much of a chance Vegeta did not stand against Frieza, because Frieza was toying so much in his final form, so his 100% final form is completely out of the question. Vegeta was so outclassed that looking back on this, this was one of the saddest things about it, combined with the torture that Frieza was giving him. And to make matters worse, what makes this even worse than the 18 beatdown is looking at the audience in the background, which, of course, would be the other fighters. And Gohan, Piccolo, and Krillin were so petrified of Frieza that they literally didn't do anything and just watched Vegeta get torn apart and just watched on in complete fear. Whereas with 18, we could at least say that when Vegeta was really starting to get destroyed in the fight, Trunks jumped in to try and help. And even though he was quickly outclassed by both 17 and 18 as well, you could at least say that the other fighters trained enough and had enough confidence that they could at least go in and try and help Vegeta. Whereas the pure fear that they had against Frieza was just on a completely different level. But the absolute biggest reason of all why we would have to put Frieza above any other beatdown that Vegeta has ever had, it would have to be the fact that Frieza actually killed him. And that puts the icing on the cake, because with Android 18, she beat him extremely badly, but he was still alive in the end, and he was left alive like a helpless child, but was still left alive. And against Kid Buu, Vegeta was technically already dead when the fight was starting. So yeah, there was tension that if Kid Buu was able to win, then Vegeta wouldn't even exist anymore. But the key thing about Frieza is that he actually killed him. And there are definitely other Vegeta fights out there that are serious beatdowns, like you have the Jiren fight, you know, which you could use as an example for Dragon Ball Super. You have the Hit fight that you could use in the Universe 6 tournament. You could even use the Raccoon fight. You could even use the Perfect Cell brief beatdown, because Cell really didn't beat Vegeta down too badly, but he did essentially render him useless on 2 separate occasions, so you could mention those. But overall, most Dragon Ball fans would agree that this is definitely the big 3, and the crazy thing about you guys is that you guys are in perfect agreement with me, as your poll results months ago perfectly correlate to exactly how I would rank Vegeta's worst beatdowns, with Kid Buu getting 15% of the vote, Android 18 getting 23% of the vote, and Frieza getting 58%. And of course, I put Fat Buu in there because, you know, when he put that little gumball thing on him and it was just pounding him in the face, that was rather bad too, but that just simply can't compare to what the other 3 have done. But the conversation doesn't end here, because the conversation will continue with what you think is Vegeta's worst beatdown in Dragon Ball history, and anything counts. This counts movies, this counts anime, this counts manga, this counts everything Dragon Ball related. What do you think is Vegeta's worst beatdown?